for putting together the talk tonight. I think it's going to be interesting, and it's really important in terms of the full network around the coast in Dublin. So I'm really interested to hear what's going to happen. So look, that's just an intro. It's Lar Joye, the Dublin Port Heritage Director, who will give the talk, and a colleague of his, Jim Kelleher, who will support. I think it's going to take about 20-25 minutes, and then there'll be Q&A after. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. But just before we get to that, I just want to run through a couple of notices, if you like, or points that I just want to raise before we get to Lar and Jim. That'll just take about 5 or 6 minutes. So Siobhan, if you can just move on. Yeah, so just one point to mention. A new bike lane has gone in Sean Moore Road, which brings you it goes from Beach Road up to the roundabout and then along to the East Link. So it's a two-way cycle lane, high quality cycle lane. It's beside the Playback site, if anybody knows that. It's on the new houses side of it. And this is the lane you can see on the left here. In the image in the middle, it shows you what part of the coastal route it fits in. So it's basically the highlighted area that I've shown there, and it goes from, as I said, Beach Road up to the roundabout, totally segregated. And then there's a quiet way along Pigeon House Road, which avoids that busy road over to the East Link. So we're kind of bit by bit, we're closing the gaps, the missing gaps in the coastal route. And the purple lines you see there are obviously what Lara is going to talk about now, the routes in the port. And just on the right hand side, I want to just mention a resource, if you like. Dublin Bay by Bike is a new website, an interactive website of the coastal route with places of interest along the way. This is actually how we got in contact with Lara, because we want to include some of the places of interest in the port, the historical places of interest and so on. So I would encourage you to go on, have a look at that. And if you have any suggestions for improvements, get in touch with us. Moving on, Siobhan. Yeah, just one of the really important things that I want to mention. Some work we've done recently is around bike parking. And bike parking is really important for getting more people out, whether that's public bike parking, high density bike parking like Drury Street. And we've got a couple of resources here. A year ago, we did a survey of supermarkets, the bike parking quality at supermarkets. We got the survey results, and we produced a very short bike parking guide for supermarkets. It's only 5 or 6 pages. Here's the link. And at this stage, we really need people to go and speak to the supermarket management with this guide and ask for improved bike parking. So all the details are in the guide. Here's the link. If you need any help, get in touch with us at that email address. But really, you know, we need our members now to go out and speak to kind of shops and supermarkets and ask for better bike parking, both regular bike parking and cargo bikes. Just a reminder that if people see places around the city where they think bike parking could be improved, you can send an email into the covidmobility@dublincity.com with photos explaining why and where you'd like to see the additional bike parking, and they will look through the requests. And finally, there's a fantastic podcast on car parking and bike parking and how the two are important and how they relate to each other. It's this resource that you might know about, which is spokesman.com. The particular podcast is a Donald Shoup, and it's really interesting if you want to learn a little bit more about why bike parking is so important for getting more people on the bike. Moving on, Siobhan. Yeah, this is just really a reminder. There's a lot of new infrastructure that's going in around the city, and sometimes the council officials and the councillors themselves are under a certain amount of pressure from locals and so on, who may have some complaints. Maybe they've lost a bit of car parking, or maybe they have to take a slightly longer trip in the car. So it really does help if people get out and take pictures of people on the routes, and send messages, copying ourselves and the councillors and the council. And these are just a couple of examples. So on the left-hand side, you've got the new Sean Moore Road bike lane. You've got 2 kids on it. The best thing is to take pictures of the route when people are on it, particularly kids and women, because that's what bike lanes do. They allow people of all ages and abilities to cycle. There's another one in the middle, and on the right hand side you have the Kilmainham. So there are 3 schemes that have come in recently: Sean Moore Road, Griffith Avenue, and Kilmainham. They're all important. Or in the bottom right, if you are out on the route anywhere around the coast or anywhere in Dublin for that matter, get a good photo of yourself or of a bike, and post it on Instagram, post it on Twitter, tag us. And we launched a campaign recently with all the health groups, all the sports groups, so Irish Heart Foundation, RCSI, the GPs. So feel free to tag them in those photos, and it does help to get schemes off the ground. Moving on, Siobhan. Yeah, this is just a reminder of some of the recent events we've had. In the top left there, that's actually Sean Moore Road in Irishtown, where we started our Halloween cycle. The image in the middle is Sandymount Green, where we finished, and we had the Gardaí. On the bottom left again was the kind of the fun we had in Sandymount Green when we got there. So it was a really positive event, community event. We want to do more of these, and we've been organising them so far, but members and cyclists around Dublin can organise them themselves, and we would be willing to help and marshal potentially, and certainly give advice. So anybody can set up a community cycle. Just 2 other events. On the top right, that's the campaign I was talking about, where we got all the health groups and sporting groups, and we kind of clubbed together and made the argument for cycle lanes. So you can have a look at that online. And finally, in the bottom right, these monthly cycles are cycles particularly aimed at women. So I think it's on Twitter, Instagram, and so on. So if any women in particular would like to join any of those cycles, they're more than welcome. And then moving on, Siobhan. Yeah. So all that work that the volunteers do. I mean, while we're a lot better known than we were 2 years ago, we're doing an awful lot more. We've had a lot of success, and we definitely could do with more members, both individual and business. Now, this is the business membership flyer on the left-hand side. But effectively, with more funding, what can you do? Well, you kind of need resources for things like, going to daytime council meetings. Making submissions to planning applications is extremely time heavy, and organising cycling events such as the Halloween cycle, these do take time. If we had full-time resources, we could do a lot more of this. If you look at some of the cycling campaigns around the world, San Francisco, for example, they've got like 10,000 members and 10 staff. We have 1,000 paid member, 1,000 members and 1 staff member. So we could do a whole lot more if we had more funding, or particularly looking for corporate funding. And you can see the links there. So if anybody has, works in companies that they think might be interested in this, please get in touch with us. And then finally, Siobhan, yeah, just a reminder that all these monthly meetings are recorded and they're on YouTube. So just go on to the Dublin Cycling Campaign on YouTube, and you can see that all last year we had pretty much one every month apart from the summer. And you can see the list there. I'm sure you'll find 1 or 2 that interest you. To be honest, if I was starting, I'd start with January 21, delivering Dublin Cycling Network. It's a really thorough review of where we are and where we need to be. It's a fantastic intro to cycling in Dublin. So this one will also be recorded. So listen, now I'll hand over to Lar Joye. So Lar, thanks a million, and Jim, thanks for putting together the presentation. Any questions, put them in chat, and we'll get to the questions afterwards. Thanks.
David, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Siobhan, for setting up tonight's talk. I'm going to see if the share function works. It does. Everyone can see that?
Yeah.
Good. Just say thank you very much, and again, thank you very much for inviting us to talk about our plans at Dublin Port. My colleague Jim Keller and myself both work in Port Heritage and Communications, which is a new department within the port that looks after heritage, but also looks after some of the bigger projects, which I'll talk about, including the Greenway and cycle route plans. So we're looking forward to explaining what we're up to. What I want to do is just quickly put some context about the port, its past and present, and then look at the route plans, which are the Talca Estuary Greenway, the Liffey Talca Greenway, the pedestrian cycle network, and then the recently announced last week, the 3rd final master plan project, which I'll talk about, and then just talk about some of our other projects, which are non-Greenway or cycle route related. And it, as David said, should come in about 25, 30 minutes. The port itself has been around for quite a long time, since 1707. It's had various names. Common in Dublin will be Dublin Port and Docks Board. But since 1997, it's a semi-commercial semi-state known as Dublin Port Company. And it's a landlord port responsible for the facilities within the port, but then there are a series of tenants who actually operate the ships and unloading of ships. Just to give you an idea of how it's physically dominated the city, everywhere that's grey in that 1970s map has been filled in by the port since 1707. So immediately once the ballast board is established, the filling in from North Strand right out to where we are today started. And similarly on the south side, you can see that the sea in many ways went up as far as Bulls Bridge, and in many it also went up as far as Trinity College. So the city has been moving eastwards since 1707. Stopped in 2010 when Board of Hull made a decision, and the right one, that the port can no longer expand into the bay because of the importance of the various nature reserves around the port, but in particular, of course, the importance of the bay. This is the Custom House at its peak, busy at the centre part of the port, but as I say, by the 1900s, the port is moving further down. This area here is where the trawlers were based, which is the Point, which is why the Point is called the Point. That's where the Three Arena Theatre is now, where that lighthouse is. And that would have been the furthest point of the port until the 1850s and 1860s. By 1906, you can see that the port is incredibly busy. On the north side, predominantly railway yards, and that's where the conference centre today and the Three Arena is. They were former rail yards. On the south side, it's more industrial. You have the big presence of the Dublin Gas Company and other industries over there. And this is the furthest part, the point that the port has expanded to. This is what it looks like today. It consists on the north side, but also a substantial part on the south side, about 1.5 kilometres of quay walls on the south side. On the south side, since the 1960s, once the land was purchased off the Earl of Pembroke and the Pembroke estate, this whole area was developed with Dublin Corporation expanding their sewage works, the ESB developing their power stations, and then the recent addition of the incinerator about 10 years ago. In the 1980s, the area around the Custom House had kind of become derelict, as these photographs from our collection show. You have the Stack A building and then a view from Liberty Hall into what is now the financial district. And essentially this area in 1989 was handed over to the Docklands Development Board, and they took hold of it for the next 25 odd years. And what you have now is that kind of split between the city and the port. So the Docklands goes up as far as the Eastlink Bridge or the Tom Clark Bridge, and then everything past the Eastlink Bridge is where the port is today. In many ways, people don't engage with the port as much as they did in the 80s and earlier, because we now will fly off the island, but anyone in the 80s normally would have left by ferry. So those kind of trips through the port have stopped. In many ways, it's hidden behind the wall. Within the port, there are 4 ferry companies operating, going to Liverpool and to Holyhead. Seatruk and PO go to Liverpool. Stena Line and Irish Ferries take about 3.5 hours to get to Holyhead in Wales. And then there are 3 competing low-low terminals. Low-low is lift-on, lift-off, which is very large cranes. And you can see each company has a different colour code for their cranes. And as I say, they're all competing against each other. More recently, we have now got Ro-Ro or roll-on, roll-off going directly to Europe with these very large ships, in particular the Celine, which is the largest ferry operating in Europe. It's carrying about 8.5 kilometres of trailers and containers on board. And these are the new routes that are going to Rotterdam and Zeebrugge and being nicknamed the Brexit Busters. And this is the extent of the port today, looking westwards, looking down the river. As I say, very industrial on the south side, and then the complete port on the north side. Just one thing before I look at the greenways is just to kind of emphasize the importance of the 2 walls, which I regularly walk. The 2 walls, the Great South Wall and the North Bull Wall, are essentially doing what they've done for well over 200 years, which is keeping the port open. Due to very clever engineers at the time, by narrowing the channel, this allowed the depth of water to increase in the river. And that's why the Dublin Port is here today. The east coast of Ireland is very difficult to build ports and harbours, and they're very reliant on using rivers to give them a bit of depth. But by narrowing the channel, that allowed the port to develop, particularly after the North Bull Wall was built in the 1820s. In 2012, excuse me, the port completed a master plan for 2040. As I said, after the decision of Board Plan All, the port's priority now is a capacity building, which is updating the port to allow the bigger ships to come into it. And also port city integration, realizing that it needed to start talking to the communities around it and improve that relationship. And it identified within the master plan a series of greenways, which you can see from this image here. You have the Talca Estuary Greenway, which is that purple and pink line following the northern fringe of the port. Then you have the Liffey Talca pedestrian cycle route, which was announced last week, which has been designed by Grafton Architects, which is about 1.4 kilometres, going from the Eastlink Bridge up as far as the Talca River. And again, that's quite a substantial piece of infrastructure. And then within the port, as we're updating the roads, there's also pedestrian cycle network. And that's to improve for pedestrians and cyclists to move their way around the port, which I'll talk about. And that's ongoing, which hopefully will be completed this time next year. And then last week, we just announced the final part of the master plan, so 3FM, third final master plan, which will look at improving the capacity in the South Port, but also in particular introducing a new and better cycleways and network of pedestrian walkways into that part of the port. The Talca Estuary Greenway follows, as I say, the northern fringe of the port, overlooking that area that was being filled in over the years, but overlooking into Clontarf, kind of some great views that we can enjoy, but now designing this is very much designed to improve the view for the general public. And the idea is to have it for pedestrian and for cyclists, but also it's particularly important for the people living in Clontarf that trees be reintroduced. They've been removed recently for some parts of the road network, but they are being reintroduced to cover away from the port. And that's something that the port has been doing for the last 30 years. So any trees that have been removed in the last year or two are to be replaced with new and bigger ones, which was to happen late in 2022. And there's also going to be vantage points throughout the port, this particular greenway, to allow people to see Clontarf, but also see the bay and kind of see it in ways that you haven't seen it before. And we're hoping to have a series of interpretive points working with Fulcher Ireland to allow people to kind of see the port, but understand what's happening to their right as they're cycling out within the port. It's a busy place, but also in particular to look into the nature reserve, explain the nature reserves, and also talk about the history of Clontarf going back as far as 1014, right up to the present day. And at the end of this greenway, there'll be a brand new park built, again, to give visitors a vista of Dublin Bay that they haven't seen before. So we're really looking forward to this, and it's an exciting project which has full planning permission, and work has begun this year. The first work that have to happen, and hopefully you can see my cursor at the bottom photograph, is a coastal defence had to be added to the greenways to make sure that if there's any storms similar to 2018, that the greenway is protected. But you kind of looking again west, get an idea in the area that has the Circle K and the new custom house building customs, an idea of kind of the scale of the greenway at this part. And then as we come along, you'll see again the diggers putting in the new path, but also bringing in some new soil in preparation for the planting season next year. The construction of the kind of greenway that is happening at the moment should be completed kind of Q2 next year. And then we have to wait for the building or planting season to finish off the greening of the greenway. And then it comes around this area here past what is called the new Brexit zone, which has been built over the last 2 years to open this year. Now all boats coming into the port from Holyhead go through this area on the left-hand side, which is the area for immigration, customs, agriculture, and a new police station has just opened there. And this will then come around here. This is phase 1, which will just finish here. And then phase 2, which will bring us around to the new park, will be about 2 years away. And again, that's to allow new coastal defences to be built before that work can be undertaken. So that's the Talca Estuary Greenway. Then looking at the Liffey Talca pedestrian and cycle route, this is an area, this is kind of a slice, if you look on the right hand side, starting at the Eastlink Bridge, cutting all along the edge of what is the port today, and giving 10 metres into the port lands to give a substantial pedestrian and cycle route along what is quite a dangerous road. Both Jim and myself cycle and this road I cycle every day, and it's particularly a tricky one because of the volume of traffic rushing to get into the port tunnel. So the idea is to take the cyclists and pedestrians and give them an area that's safe. You'll also see in the centre of that also a new pedestrian bridge to be built over Promenade Road to again allow pedestrians and cyclists to be safe from what is a very, very busy road. Again, a lot of the material I'm talking about you'll find on our website, and I have links at the end of my presentation. This is the design statement that Grafton Architects did last year, and looking at the Liffey Talca pedestrian cycle route, and it gives you an idea of what we're designing, what we're hoping to kind of get out of this project. Starting off at the Eastlink Bridge, on the left-hand side there you have the 3 Arena, and then the P&O in Terminal 3 on the western side. And you can see it's going to be an area that we're also going to avail of to green. It's also going to go into the current port centre. In 2017, the port rebuilt this area and reinstalled a maritime garden, some work that Jim worked on at that time. It's quite spectacular. It was launched by the then Taoiseach Leo Varadkar in late 2017. And some photographs later on to show you the work that happened there. But you can see we'll go through there, through the garden, across the Alexandra Road, and then on the inside of a wall there, bring you along through a series of yards to bring you up to, as you can see on the right hand side, the bridge, which will get us over Promenade Road, and then join up with the Talca Greenway. So one full loop and quite an exciting cycle once it's developed. This gives you an idea of Eastwell Road. This is the new EXO building, which will be opening up shortly. I think Unpost are moving their headquarters in there. But it kind of gives you an idea then of the scale of the public realm, and also the cycle and pedestrian area. It's quite a substantial area, quite a safe one. And there's another image just to kind of give you an idea. Then we have the pedestrian cycle network, which is working in tandem with the rebuilding of some of the roads throughout the port. The areas that you see in red are work that's already happened and is underway. And as the roads project is coming to kind of an end next year, more and more of the paths along those roads will be opened up to pedestrians and to cyclists. Probably the best example of that is at the Circle K station, or Circle K petrol station, which is just to the left of this image. And this again with the main road for most truck traffic coming out of the tunnel as they come into the port. But you can see the nature of the paths, which have been greatly expanded, and also this introduction of zebra crossings to allow people to cross the roads. And again, Circle K for a lot of people working. And again, part of the idea, or very much part of the idea behind the pedestrian cycle network is for the staff. There's about 5,000 people working in the port. The port company itself is quite a small staff of about 160, but the various companies operating in the port are very, very busy. So again, more and more of them are coming by bike, and also in particular on scooters, which we're seeing more and more. And as this work is undergoing, we'll be doing we'll be doing a very big project on Alexandra Road. And that's will take place next year. But in kind of preparation for that, this week, temporary cycle facilities have been installed on the northern edge of that road. It's quite a dangerous road because in the middle you have railway tracks going up as far as Tower Mines. So between 5 and 6 trains a day are coming down from the Irish Rail yard across Eastwell Road and then into the port all along Alexandra Road. They're going to Tower Mines with zinc from the mines in County Meath, but also have containers, and then also Coca-Cola use it for as well as sending trains to Waterford, bringing Coca-Cola syrup down. So quite a busy area, and then when you have the trucks, also quite can be quite a scary experience if it's your first time coming to the port. So this barrier here will protect cyclists and pedestrians in the interim until the road is rebuilt in the near future. And this kind of also gives you, as you go further down Aggs Road, you can see again the barriers will continue and have been installed again to protect cyclists and pedestrians in what is quite a hostile space. Then kind of, as I mentioned last week, we announced the last part of the master plan. So there's been the Alexander Basin Redevelopment Project, which ABR, which will open next year. There's the MP2 Master Plan 2, which is rebuilding the area around Terminal 1. And the 3FM project then relates to the South Port. And again, I'll have links at the end of the presentation, so you can go in, have a look at what has been proposed and a series of videos. And of course, it is there for conversation and consultation. So we would be great if we could have your feedback on what you think of our proposals for the 3FM project. This is, again, gives indication of the port lands on the south side. As I said, it's a shared space. Area K, O, and N are the kind of three areas that are busy for the port. Both Jim and myself then also have responsibility for the Great South Wall, which is a listed monument under DCC as protection, but also as a national monument. So it is one of the very important engineering feat, started in 1720 and only completed in 1795. So therefore needs to be looked after. So it's not just those areas, we also have great responsibility for our historical infrastructure. And probably the element that kind of attracted most interest in the media last week was the introduction of a new bridge to deal with port traffic and to take it off the Eastlink bridge. And this will link up both sides of the port and cut down on some of the traffic that's on the Eastlink bridge, which can be, again, for cycling daily, quite a dangerous road that you really need to get off the bridge and to go onto the pathway. So when we look at the overall kind of plan for cycling on the north side and the south side, you can see very much a large amount of cycling infrastructure. You can kind of see the length of them there on the right hand side. And this kind of, as David was saying, ties in with the new recent development of the Sean Moore Road cycleway, which is very, very impressive. Then just look at some of the current and future plans that we're working on. In 2015, Jim actually worked on this wonderful project of reinstalling the diving bell on Sir Hodgson's Quay. The diving bell is a very large object that was used to build most of the quay walls in Dublin from the 1870s on. The design that Jim came up with was to lift the diving bell up and then build a small museum underneath it. And the museum prior to COVID was getting about 80,000 to 100,000 visitors a year, and explains how the port was built from the 1870s under a famous engineer called Bindon Bloodstoney. The diving bell was used to flatten out the riverbed before large 300-ton cement blocks were dropped on the riverbed. And so again, it's amazing that it survived, and it was in use right up into the 1950s. As I mentioned earlier on, the area around Port Centre then has been redeveloped as a maritime garden. The wall that was there has been redesigned by Tim Darby Architects. Again, this hostility that was there between the wall hiding the port away from the city has been broken down by the architects. So you have this wonderful corten steel gate which are opened to allow people in. And then also the reinstallation of one of the 3 heritage cranes that we have that still survived. 40 years ago, there were about 66 such cranes in Dublin. They all very, very quickly scrapped once containerization took over. And also working with Darby Architects, we've saved part of the shipbuilding area in the Alexander Basin redevelopment area, which is based around the pump houses that were used for the 2 large grading docks. And this is a first phase of a 2-phase project to open up Grading Dock 1, which is that area that you can see lines around. Grading Dock 1 was established in the 1850s and it's the first grading dock built in Ireland. And grading docks or dry docks are essential for the maintenance of ships. Nowadays, of course, the ships have got so large that these have become quite outdated. And again, that just gives you an idea of the finish for the gate going into the heritage area. and it gives you an idea of some of the elements that we saved down there, including the original 1950s crane and also the gate for Gravy Dock 2. Darnby also working with us on the red brick substation, which the substation at Southside Port Centre, which you can see on East Hull Road, has protected status. So we are revamping it, preserving it, and then also building onto the side a new element to kind of give it some depth. And this will be used for events, for lectures, but also to talk about the history of the port. Because in many ways, this was the dividing line of the port, always up to the 1850s and 1860s. And over the years, since 2015, the port's been involved in a series of artist installations and working with musicians on a series of projects. Dublin Ships was a very popular one on sides of bridges. We then also had in 2016 Starboard Home with the National Concert Hall, which proved very, very popular. And in 2018, the original Liffey Ferry, which was retired after the East Hill Bridge opened in the early 1980s, has been refurbished and is now back on the water, doing tours around Dublin and into the port, which is well worth the trip if you get a chance to go on it. And Jim, myself, last year worked on 2 projects. We worked during COVID and during the second lockdown on the Pump House Presents. We staged a series of plays which were filmed inside the pump house. And they were then aired actually about a year ago this week, over a 3-week period. Each play filmed by these wonderful people, highlighting different aspects of Irish history, but also in and around the local communities. And then this year we had the Book of Names, which ran from the 4th of October to the 13th of November, which was a physical show to an audience of about 12 or 13 people, which again proved very, very popular. Started off as part of the Dublin Theatre Festival and then moved on to another 3-week run. And it's just ended. And as I said, proved very, very popular. It talked about the history of the port during the War of Independence, in particular, the men and women in the port who also worked with the IRA. And we've also just worked with our colleagues in the Little Museum and with Frank MacDonald, formerly of the Irish Times, on the Little History of the Future of Dublin, an exhibition book which Frank has curated and which the Port Archive has contributed a series of maps to. So again, a wonderful chance to learn about Dublin City. Please do buy the book, which is fascinating, especially over the last Frank survey of the last 30 or 40 years of Dublin. We also have a port archive, which I look after, which covers the 300-year history of the port. Very visual, has 30,000 engineering drawings and about 78,000 photographs. There's some samples there of some of our collection. And again, we do have a port archive, website, which we're regularly updating. And again, working with Grafton Architects in 2019, we developed a master plan for the old Odlum site. This is an area which, again, if you're coming from the south side to go on the East Link Bridge, you'll see the Odlum silos that you can see there on the left-hand side. Quite a tall building, 15 stories high, quite dominates the space. And on the other photograph, you can see it from Alexandra Roads. It's an area that we are going to turn into a cultural area. In particular, we're very keen to get people on top of the Odlum silos so that people can see the port. And here are just some of the concept drawings from the master plan that Grafton Architects have developed for the area, including this very clever idea of a high line to bring people from the East Wall Road through the port and up to Odlums. And again, within the flour mill area, the idea to have a great hall, again, to kind of show some of the history of the port and some of the kind of the transport elements that we associate with the port and its 300-year history. And from the archive point of view, we're also developing an archive for the Port Archive, which we are hoping to begin working on in 2022. So hopefully I didn't fly through that too quickly, but it kind of gives you an idea of what Jim and myself are working on along with our colleagues and the various design teams. That's my email. Please don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions, if we don't answer your questions during the Q&A. The 3 websites there are within the Dublin Port's own website. You'll find a section on the master plan. And within that, the master plan documents, you'll have details of the Talca Greenway, but also the Liffey Talca cycle and pedestrian route. I mentioned the Dublin Port Archive with a lot of our collections already up that we're regularly updating. And then last week we announced the 3FM project. And again, if you go to the Dublin Port website, that'll bring you directly to the specific website. Will tell you more about the plans for 3FM. So hopefully I haven't talked too quickly. That's been all understood.
Thanks, Lar.
Great, Lara. Thanks a million. And you're bang on time as well. Well done. You must have experience of it. Look, I have a number of questions that came through here, but look, just before we start, I would recommend that people go and have a look at that Dublin Port Archive website. I went on to it, and I think it's an amazing resource. I never realized it was there. You know, it really has amazing history and so on. So go and have a look at that. So listen, I'll just kick off with the questions if that's okay. And if I miss any, maybe Siobhan will jump in at the end. But given that we have about 19 minutes, I suppose like kind of maybe a minute or so per question, there's a fair few that are recurring. Look, the one that's coming up most often, Lara, is questions around link to East Point. So East Point Business Park linking into the Alfie-Byrne Road. Are there any plans for that? Again,
there's certain areas that we don't own or operate, so it's private land. East Point is privately owned. So again, that's one a discussion we need to have, and maybe you guys need to have with them also to see about that link. You also see one similarly on the south side. I mean, there's land there and there's roads that operated. Some roads are operated by DCC, operated by us, and then operated by the ESB. So it's shared space. So what we're doing is kind of looking after what we can, which we have responsibility for. So I'm not dodging the question, but it's an area that's privately held at the moment. So it would be great to have it, but it is privately held land.
Can I come in there as well, Lar?
Yeah, sure.
Under that, and then I suppose it's our route brings the potentiality of that link to happen in the future. It's very much up to the private owner there to follow up on that. But we've presented to them, we've shown them where ours can connect in, and our greenway is coming right up and adjacent to it by provision of a bridge, and also the cycle and pedestrian route adjacent to it.
I mean, you'd imagine. I mean, I'm sure there are difficulties, but it would be a huge benefit for their own staff.
Yeah, and they've actually built a huge amount of bike parking there recently, because again, I think more and more people are coming by bike and scooter. I mean, in an ideal world, if we had a billionaire who could afford it, it'd be nice to build a bridge that was compliant with the nature reserve right across Tulk Estuary over to Clontarf. But again, that would be an incredibly expensive process, and as I say, it's quite hard with an area that has special designation. But it would be, if you like, the sight line, the desire line would be to go straight, but would be a big engineering achievement. So that's great. And one of the questions was, will it be safer effectively for people to cycle to the ferry? Yeah, no. So that is the idea between the Tulk. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that people can stay off the roads. I mean, we are building, as I say, infrastructure for people to go through on the roads. But the perfect route for us would be to go along the Liffey Tulka cycle pedestrian route, join up with the estuary route, and then come right around the northern fringe. And then there's a link from the park into Terminal 1. Terminal 1 is the main one that we get queries from cyclists, and we get regular queries from people coming over from UK on cycling holidays, and they talk about how difficult it is and dangerous they feel on that stretch, and that's why we're doing this. In many ways, once you're on Passport Centre, you're onto Sheriff Street, and then you're at the canal at that stage, and you're kind of off the road from then on. So no, that's the main aim of the Tulk Estuary route, is to get that kind of traffic, if you like, tourist traffic off. The PCM then is very much to deal with people who are actually working in the port, mightn't be going the whole way down to Terminal 1. And again, if you don't put in that infrastructure, they're going to go on the road because it's the quickest way of getting there. I think that'd be fair to say, Jim.
Absolutely, Larry. Yeah. I suppose in advance of the full greenway being delivered in its entirety, we see very much that our port, the pedestrian cycle network, would provide a safe link between 2 points within the port. And obviously, the obvious one is between the city and the ferry terminal. I suppose that's at its extremity, and then all other various points in between that we can manage to provide connectivity to. We will endeavour to do that.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions at the end, but one of the questions from Colin Ryder was, do we have a map of the present boundary area for Dublin Port, and could we share it?
Yeah, we do actually. We have maps, but I can send out, Colin. We produce a yearbook every year, and in the centre of that is a very detailed map of who owns what areas. And you can send a scan if you want. It's no secret, but as I say, we have it in the yearbook every year. We took a few of those steps from this year, which details a lot of the work about the greenways that we're doing and our heritage projects, but also gives you an idea of what's been imported, what's been exported to the port.
It also shows the ownership of which roads we own and the city council own, because there's quite a bit of confusion around that. We frequently get queries in about roads that aren't in our jurisdiction. So absolutely, we can get that to Colin, no problem.
Yeah, brilliant. Just going back on the East Point one, I see Donna Cooney, Councillor Donna Cooney, has mentioned that the City Council are upgrading Athleyburn Cycleway, so perhaps there could be a way in to discuss with the East Point Business Park owners. So hopefully she'll take that one away. Just on a slightly lighter note, the history of Captain Bligh in Dublin Port, is it exaggerated, or how involved was he in the design report?
Lar's first slide does him very much justice, if you want to put it up there.
Captain Bligh is the first thing everyone says about the port. Sadly, he was only here for about 3 months. But what he is really remembered for is the fact he's the first person to survey the bay properly. So he was a terrible ship's captain, but he was a brilliant surveyor and engineer. And he did it in winter, which is even more impressive. So he went out in a boat, quite a small one, with a team, and they surveyed the bay. So his map was the first one that a ship's captain could actually take and trust. Prior to that, lots of surveyors had come in and had surveyed it, but you really couldn't trust their navigation. And the other thing they identified was the need for the North Bull wall. But if on his map, it's shown in a different position from where it finally went. And it probably, kind of a sign of how things take so long. It took another 20 years before it was actually built. It was built by a different gentleman, a different surveyor called Giles. And again, on the archive website, we have a Giles's map, which actually is spectacular. It measures about, I think it's 1.52 meters by 3.5 meters. So it's quite a big piece. And that, again, detailing on that for that is just spectacular. But yeah, so he is very, very important. He's the first person to say this is what the bay is, this is what the depth of water is. And then he's one of many engineers who identifies the need to have this North Bull wall or North Wall. I think in his plan, the wall was going to come off the point and follow the South Wall. And then there was other ones going to come directly from Clontarf Village, and then it was further up towards the sheds. So no, he's still definitely good. What's interesting, he'd already suffered one mutiny. He then goes back as governor of New South Wales and then suffers a second mutiny, at which stage they promote him to Vice Admiral and send him home to retire.
And I suppose like the North Bull Wall created, effectively Bull Island was created after that, just through the,
Yeah, your classic case of a man-made intervention creating something that nature took over, and there's a bird sanctuary out there. It's part of the wider biosphere. Yeah. So really much to the east of Dublin Port, we're squeezed in by the biosphere of the bay, and to the west, the city.
Yeah.
So.
And that was the big challenge for the engineers, was the whole area kind of shows the need of this kind of shifting sand. But if you can imagine, every winter that went back and forth and blocked the channel, and that's why Dublin was so difficult to come into, because of the massive shifting sands which you got from Marion Strand, Sandymount, and so on.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question whether there's any possibility of linking the kind of maybe the Sean Moore bike path to heading out towards the South Bull Wall. You probably know that there's a huge community of swimmers that have started there since COVID, and I'm one of them because I live locally. But I know the route very well, and it's a pretty nasty route for cyclists. Now you can go through the nature reserve, and if you just take your time, it's pretty safe.
I cycled today. I went down to the cycle all to myself today, and Pigeon House Road, the road you're talking about, goes along the the various ESB power stations, so,
Yeah.
so the incinerator. Yeah, nearly lost the bike of one or two potholes. So yeah, no, the idea is that will have a pedestrian and cycle routes on both sides of the road, and then an upgrading of the nature reserve. So I came back by the nature reserve. Nature reserve hasn't changed in 30 years. I mean, granted, the trees have taken off, but the path is still the same size, and the idea is to put in a proper kind of 5 meters to give people safety, because in particular during the COVID, when I walked it, there was just thousands of people out there, and there wasn't enough space to even to walk on it, let alone cycle on it. So within that map, I had showed up the kind of 3FM area. The plan is to upgrade that on the nature reserve and also on the pigeon house side, because it's a common complaint that we're getting from people.
Okay.
And at this stage, we say in the 3FM website that we have a clicker for measuring people, numbers going up and down the wall. So we're getting about 500 people a day on average. So, and then at the weekends, that jumps up to well over 1,000. So it's a hugely popular destination. And a lot of the tourist books now have it as a kind of, a destination that no one else goes to. So it's become very, very popular for locals and tourists. So it definitely, the whole kind of connectivity there is designed to kind of get that. And we've talked about, you and Dave myself, we've talked about the need to have more cycle parking down there, and to kind of have better facilities is definitely needed.
Yeah, no, I know we've that's we'll deal with that offline, but definitely it would be great to get the proper bike parking in there, because it's but that's fine, we'll deal with that separately. Siobhan, are there any other questions that I've missed? I mean, there's a couple of ones like the width of the greenway, things like that in through the port, but we mightn't get into that level of detail.
No, I mean, we're happy to say, I mean, the Tulka Greenway is at 3.5 meters. So again, the challenge there is that we're trying to build up a kind of a bank of greenery also for the residents of Clontarf, and then we have a 3.5. I think both Jim and myself would have preferred a larger one, and that's why when we came to look at Liffey Tulka, that we have quite a large cycleway. I think it's at 5 meters, is it, Jim?
It is, yeah, it is. It's very generous, absolutely, and combined with the the margin for planting, and then the pedestrian access, and it's universally accessible. Something very important to us. It's generous indeed. Yes.
And then when going back to the nature reserve one, that path does need to go out to 5 meters. There's no way that you can, So yeah, again, that's kind of very prevalent in our minds, not that they need to be wide enough.
And I presume they'll be kind of, are they going to be segregated or mixed with pedestrians, or how will it work?
Liffey Tulka is segregated, so it's segregated cycle route and segregated pedestrian. The Liffey Tulka, the Tulka Greenway is a shared surface, and that's simply due to the physical constraint of the 3.5 meter width is the max really we can get in on a lot of it. Where we can go wider, we will, of course, but it's very much the rim of the port squeezed in between operational yard space, roads, and then the rock armor on the seaside of it. So look, we see it as great space to utilize for this. Okay.
Siobhan, did I miss anything there?
Yeah, there was one interesting question from Ellen about are there plans to improve public transport access to the ferry terminals?
Yeah, well, that in conjunction with Dublin Bus, and there's been discussions in our organisation with Dublin Bus. I do believe there's an upgrade to the bus facility at the Stena Line, Terminal number 2. That's the only information I have currently on it, but it has been something that's looked at. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few others here. I just don't want to miss anything. What level of provision will the new bridge across the Liffey have for the Lewis? Have you engaged with TII?
Yeah, no, it's the TII. You can see in the image the Lewis is there, as well as extra cycleways, active routes as they call them. So yeah, no, that's kind of there, and it kind of goes up to the new area in the bottom side, Pembroke, and stops there. So that's designed into it.
And the expected opening date of I guess it's staggered, is it?
For that bridge.
Or no, sorry, generally. I think
no,
of that was
the
a question way
Talca,
back.
the Talca will open next year after we've done the planting season, because we're still building at the moment. It'll be October before we can do the planting. So, I would hope this time next year that we'll have an open greenway there. The Liffey Talca is in planning at the moment, so we're still waiting for a decision on that. And then the PCN network is ongoing, so that's going to be as the roads are rebuilt. So again, by the end of next year, a substantial amount of that should be built. So we're kind of catching up over the next year and a half with a lot of our plans. It's exciting for the two of us, I think, to see them coming to fruition.
Brilliant. There's just a couple of questions about the South Wall, whether it be suitable for family cycling, and are there any plans to install public lighting along the Great South Wall?
The challenge is there, and it's a common question we get, and also facilities for toilets and so on. The challenge is because it has a preservation order on it, that at the moment every part of it requires us to, if we want to do any substantial work, we actually have to get planning permission, and we have to deal with the Department of Heritage and also DCC planners, which is the right way. But it is kind of a very long process. So I would suspect, without kind of saying what the planners would say, I'd say would they trying to put electricity onto a 300-year-old wall might be opposed as an interference. But that's a very, very common question that we get. And that's part of the challenge of trying to manage it, preserve it, and then also make it accessible, as to say, for more and more people are using it. So we're fully aware of that, but it is quite challenging. In the same way, we'd like to open up the lighthouse, Playback Lighthouse at the end, which has been there since 1769. But again, it doesn't have toilets. It doesn't have
electricity.
The electricity for the light is actually is powered on batteries and with diesel. So it is quite complicated to kind of add on modern things to a wall that has such a preservation on it.
Yeah. This is a question from someone who lives nearby about the noise, and asking what efforts are being made to reduce the noise and danger from trucks whizzing over the Eastlink Bridge.
In relation to the noise is being monitored at the moment, and if the person wants to email me, I'll definitely chat with whoever they are about it. It is being monitored and being addressed by GCC and by the port, and it's an area that we are actively engaging with the companies. So it requires, and I think it's the same for the Eastlink Bridge. It's really getting the trucks to slow down. So the speed limit now within the port is 20 kilometers. So again, it's been dropped recently. And I think that's kind of its key to the noise. If the trucks can go slower, less noise for everybody else, and particularly on a quiet night, it's a still night, the wind can come over onto the south side. So it's one we're very, very aware of. But if the person wants to email me, I'll happily introduce you to the team who are looking after that.
Oh, that's great. There's just a couple more here, and thanks very much. DCC still seems to be planning for cycling facilities on the west side of East Wall Road from the point northwards. Has Dublin Port discussed their excellent plans with DCC?
We have indeed. We've had many discussions with various branches of our colleagues in DCC, from public realm to roads and traffic to conservation. Every department in DCC we've spoken to pre-planning for Liffey Talca. Yes, they're planning with theirs, and we're planning with ours, and both will be a great addition to the area, given the hostility and difficulty for anybody walking or cycling that road. So the more the merrier, we'd say in that sense.
Brilliant. Sorry, I'm just sharing. Oh yeah, sorry, you've shared your address there. Thanks, Lar. And there was a question about, would you have a contact to email about to email in East Point? Just going back to our previous discussions of East Point. It's possibly best to get in touch with you directly. Would it be, Lar? Or
yeah, I don't. Is that?
Oh right, okay.
Do email me and I'll see what we
can find out. Yeah, we'll refer back to our own colleagues.
Yeah, I hope we've covered everybody's questions now. And it is 9 o'clock, so I think Oh, sorry, yeah, one last one, but I think we did mention this already. Bike park rack at Southwall is totally unsuitable. Is this port infrastructure? Oh, and sorry, the wooden bridge as well. That did get a couple of questions earlier about taking the no cycling signs off the wooden bridge.
But I'll deal with the bike.
Thanks. Yeah.
Park. Yeah. So there's one at Shellybanks, which is DCC on the car park, and you'll see there they have a cycle parking area there. There's an area that the port had put ones around the old pump house, which is on the south wall. And we need to upgrade that. Again, it's going to require planning permission to put one into where the cars park at the moment. So the answer is yes. It's just going to take us a few months because we have to go to a consultation about it with the various bodies, and then we also going to have to put in planning permission. So, and in particular, I mean, the thing about the south wall, the other thing just to advise people is if you are going, but we always make sure that there isn't too windy. It is a wall designed to protect the channel, and about 12 times a year it does have to be closed down because it's actually dangerous to walk on. So just to be aware of that. If it is stormy, it is dangerous to be on the wall. And in the same way, if we're putting in bike parking, we have to make sure that it will survive any storms that could come in occasionally there. Good
point. The wooden bridge in Clontarf, can we get the no cycling signs on the wooden bridge taken down?
I'm not aware of that one. We do have responsibility for the bridge, and then when you get onto the Donovan side, it's a shared space, and then PCC have control, I think, Jim, and then further on towards the end of the pier, it becomes back under our control. So let me have a look at that one for you.
Yeah, we'll look at that. There is heritage considerations around the wooden bridge, of course, and also the suitability of the surface on it, given it's raw timber planks. But we'll refer back to our colleagues on that and get back to you.
And then a couple of people have asked if the evening's presentation will be available. So we're recording this event and we'll put it up on the Cycling Campaign YouTube channel. So you'll be able to refer back to it that way. And you have the contact details for Lar as well. So I think we can wrap up, David, if that's all right. Yeah.
Just look, one thing I know, Lar and Jim, you were asking us to do was to have a look at the 3FM document to give you guys feedback. So we will do that. And just to say for myself, obviously, thanks for a fantastic presentation, really interesting evening. And it's great to have made the contact, and hopefully that it'll work both ways, you know.
More than welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, guys. I'm going to stop the recording now then.